On the Switch, there's plenty of awesome racing games to choose from, as there's been quite a few in the genre released over the years. Now I've had the privilege to check out and play many racing games for the system, and in today's video, I've rounded up a list of some of the ones that I consider to be the very best for the console. So with that said, make sure to grab your racing wheel or your controller of choice, and let's dive into the list. Horizon Chase Turbo is an arcade-style racing game that has gameplay inspired by games like the Outrun series, the Rush series, as well as the Top Gear series. You compete on a huge variety of courses from around the globe while trying to reach first place. I really adore the gameplay in this one. The driving mechanics are very easy to understand. You get a gas and a brake, as well as 3 nitros to use for extra bursts of speed during a race. There's no gear shifting to worry about, it's all automatic, and the turning mechanics are a bit simplified and easier to get the feel of compared to a lot of other racing games. As I've said many times before while talking about the game, driving around corners is really smooth and easy to do, and there's lots of times where if you really know a track and you can time your turn right, you can just floor it around a bend and never have to let go of the gas. Now you can't always do that, some turns will be tighter than others, but it's still pretty cool to do. Once you master the turning, it becomes a sort of zen-like experience as you whip around a track. In each race, there's additional goals to shoot for, such as collecting all the blue coins to unlock additional tracks, red gas canisters for fuel, and extra nitro canisters to collect to use during a race. So you'll be racing aplenty across the many tracks over and over to try to get that perfect rating. The game has a ton of tracks to race on, each with their own unique flavor and style, and there's a ton of cars to unlock and race as too. It's a really fun arcade racing game, one with a nice amount of content that you'll enjoy playing for hours on end. When it comes to kart racing games on the Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tends to get most of the love, but don't sleep on Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled. This is an excellent, high-quality kart racing game for the system. This is a remastered version of the PlayStation Classic Crash Team Racing that also includes content from Crash Nitro Kart and Crash Tag Team Racing. The classic Crash racing gameplay and experience is intact, including the unique charging boost system that rewards skilled players, and it's as fun as ever to play. The game obviously features a huge overhaul in the visuals, and it's honestly a pretty impressive looking game on the Switch, and it's amazing they got it to look so good on it. In addition to being very easy on the eyes, the amount of content and unlockables included is insane, and they have added a lot of quality of life improvements to make the game feel better than ever. On top of that all, it's a good multiplayer game too. It supports 4-player split screen on the Switch, as well as local wireless multiplayer and 8-player online play. You should definitely give this game a go if you love kart racing games. This is a very good one. The Cruis'n series, for both the arcades and the N64 console, was so much fun to play back in the day. These arcade games, originally published by Midway and Nintendo, featured some insane over-the-top racing that really made the game stand out from other arcade racing games at the time. The games were a treat, but for a long time, this series went quiet, and there wasn't any new games in the series. That is until 2017, when a brand new game called Cruis'n Blast arrived in the arcades. A few years later, the game was ported to the Switch in a new enhanced version, which added a lot more content, from new vehicles to race as well as new tracks to race on. This is such an amazing game. It's insanely fun, with a big emphasis on insanity. The racing is more over the top than ever. It's bright, in your face, and the game has you racing on the craziest tracks yet in the series. Often the tracks will radically change, adding to the chaos, as you perform tricks, jump off of ramps, and everything. And on top of that all, the cars you race as? Well, there are race cars, but you can also race as a tank, a UFO, a dinosaur, even a unicorn. Yeah, they didn't hold back on the crazy factor on this one. The racing is very easy to pick up and play, just race as fast and as hard as you can, which makes it pretty easy for everyone to get in on the fun. The only knock I have against it is while it does have split-screen multiplayer and local multiplayer, it does not have online play. I really wish it did. Still though, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is one of the better racing games for the Switch. Grid Autosport for Switch is just not a simple port of a racing game in the PS3 and Xbox 360 era. No, this release is a labor of love, and this might be the very best version of the game anywhere, while also being one of the very best games for the Switch, both in visuals and gameplay. Grid Autosport is a simcade racer. What that means is it incorporates elements of simulation racing, such as being able to customize and tune your cars to how you want, but the actual racing feels more in line with some arcade racing games in its style. The best example of this is perhaps the Forza games, maybe more so the Forza Horizon games, where you can customize and tune cars to better fit a track, but you can also easily jump in and start racing if that's not really your thing, or you're not that knowledgeable on tuning cars. Now, unlike most simcade style games on other consoles, here on the Switch, the Joy-Cons and Pro Controller do not have analog triggers, so the developers have figured out a few solutions to get around this. The first is that the acceleration is mapped to the right control stick. Now that might sound weird at first, but I quickly got used to it while playing. It works surprisingly well. Another solution is using a GameCube controller. See, the GameCube controller has analog triggers, and this game fully supports it, so players have the option of using that if they have one. Finally, the game also supports racing wheel setups for the Switch, and that even includes the racing wheel from the Nintendo Labo kit. That said, there's a lot of content here to enjoy. There's 5 different racing disciplines to experience, there's a huge career mode to play through, in addition to a massive ton of additional championships to experience, and you can also set up any of the tracks to your preferred style with the included in-game options. There's local multiplayer and online multiplayer too, for up to 8 players online. Finally, I want to add, this is a gorgeous looking game. The version on Switch looks incredible, even better than previous releases, especially when you download the free high-res texture pack. There's 3 different visual modes to select from, including a graphics mode that emphasizes visuals with a locked 30 FPS frame rate, a performance mode for 60 FPS frame rate, and even a battery saver mode for those who play in handheld mode. This game has impressed me so much, I could talk about it for an hour, but for time's sakes, I gotta move on to other racing games. So I'll simply end it here with this. You like racing games? If so, get this. It's a must-own without a doubt. If you prefer your racing with a little more destruction and a side of crazy, then Wreckfest is for you. Designed as a spiritual successor to the Flatout series, Wreckfest is a racing game and demolition derby game all in one. The game's big feature is the game engine that tracks any and all damage to the cars, as well as damage that occurs to the track itself. It's insanely highly detailed in how it tracks all this damage, and even on Switch, it retains all of this feature and it doesn't skip a beat. There's a variety of race modes, but the 2 main ones are Demolition Racing and Demolition Derby. When you're racing, you'll need to duke it out with other cars while trying to survive and reach that finish line. In Destruction Derby, you slam, crash, and try to destroy all the other cars in a event. One of the things I really love about this game is beyond the destruction, which is great, mind you, is the fact that you can race on other vehicles too, besides traditional cars, including a rideable lawnmower or even a couch with an engine attached. It's an awesome game that fully embraces the craziness, but that just makes it sweeter to play. The next 2 racing games are remasters from EA Games. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit was a well-received game from back in the day, with some great racing inspired by earlier titles in the series, along with the inclusion of high-speed police chases, with the option of driving a police car yourself in an attempt to take down other racers. Years later, the game is brought to Switch and other consoles with improved visuals, the inclusion of all the game's original DLC, along with new stuff such as new achievements, an updated gallery mode, quality of life updates, and even cross-play online multiplayer and autolog. This was a good racing game then, but it's been made even better now, and it's a joy to play the complete edition on the Switch. For the bargain hunters out there, take note that this game goes on sale in the eShop quite often for around $8 or so. It's an awesome pickup when it's on sale for that price. Physical goes for around $25 or so. Burnout Paradise is one of the best racing games of all time. An open-world racing game, it was a massive hit that allowed you to race across a big map while performing stunts, causing other cars to crash, and of course, spectacularly crashing yourself. From simple racing, to road rage, to stunt events, and more, there was always something to do around every corner in this game. Years later, EA brought this game to the Switch in the form of Burnout Paradise Remastered. Running at 60 FPS, it's simply glorious, and the chaotic racing is as fun as ever, and this edition includes all the DLC and original content, including the Big Surf Island expansion. It was an excellent racing game then, and it's still an excellent racing game now, and it's cheap to get on the Switch. Physical editions can be found for around $20 or less, and on the eShop, just like Need for Speed Remastered, it goes on sale quite a lot, often for less than $10. The SEGA AGES series from developers M2 on Switch is fantastic. They are a must for those looking to experience classics from Sega's past in all their absolute best glory, while also with a bevy of new features. One of my favorite games in the series on Switch is the SEGA AGES release of Out Run, which is one of the most important car-themed games in video game history. First released back in 1986, it challenged players with driving to the finish line while choosing their own path, while also trying to not to collide with other vehicles and objects. Unlike most racing games, it's more of a driving game. Instead of racing against your opponents, it's more about mastery of the road and the route that you have chosen. The SEGA AGES release has the classic game enhanced with new features like the ability to play at 60 FPS and in widescreen, plus there's an addition of online leaderboards, new music tracks to jam to, motion control support, and the ability to customize the game's difficulty to suit your style. In addition, there's a brand new special mode beyond the included classic arcade mode where you can earn upgrades that can greatly improve your car and make it easier to drive. The classic game was really neat at the time, and it's still absolutely worth playing. It's still an addictive game and a challenge to master, but with the inclusion of all these new features, it makes this release a must-have version of the game, and I definitely recommend this one for arcade and car game fans alike. The OG 3D arcade racing game Virtua Racing is also a part of the SEGA AGES series, and honestly, the Switch release is the best version of the game to date. Running at 60 FPS with widescreen support, online leaderboards, the replay saving, split-screen multiplayer for up to 8 players, online multiplayer, and there's even support for some neat features like motion controls. This version of Virtua Racing is a feature-packed version, and it's absolutely flawless to boot. No other home version of Virtua Racing has been this good or executed this well. Previous home versions were either flawed or radically different from the arcade game. This one retains the classic feel and experience while also adding a load of modern options to make it an even better game than before. That said, the gameplay still holds up. Yes, it's over 30 years old now, but it's still so much fun. It's easy to pick up and play, yet challenging to master, especially for those harder tracks. I highly recommend this one. It's one of the best old school arcade games on the Nintendo Switch. I never knew I needed an F-Zero game with Battle Royale elements until F-Zero 99 came along. It's a pretty cool take on the classic F-Zero gameplay, and it's one of the better multiplayer games in the system. In each track, you race against 98 other players, whether it be players online or bots, in a race to the finish on modified versions of classic F-Zero tracks, while hopefully surviving the action. Players can take you out through bumping into you or sending you into walls, and likewise, you could do the same to other players. As racers bump into each other, they drop super sparks, where others can pick it up. When a player's spark meter is full, a player can, while pressing the boost button, get access to the skyway above a track, allowing you to get access to shortcuts while also avoiding hazards and potentially climb higher in the ranks on a track. It's a cool feature that allows for a bit of strategy. Just like the original Super Nintendo game, this one is fun and easy to pop into and race. But of course, to master it, you're going to need to dedicate some time, especially with the stiff competition online. Luckily, the developers have made it easy to dedicate time to this game, with the addition of lots of unlockables to earn, and non-stop events to participate in on the hour in the game. In addition, they have repeatedly released updates to add more stuff to the game, like additional tracks, a classic mode which attempts to recreate the classic game experience, private lobbies for players, and more. It's fantastic what they have done with this release, and they have given it plenty of love, and it shows. Plus it's free. Well, I mean not exactly, as you do need Nintendo Switch Online to access it. But hey, for something you're already likely paying for, at the very least, you should download this from the eShop and give it a go. It's absolutely worth checking out. It's no surprise that one of my favorite racing games for the Switch is the kart racing game Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. For many, it's the same case, as this is the game that has sold by far the most on Switch. So yeah, it's insanely popular. You know what this game is about. I don't need to dive into it too heavily with the details, but I do want to share the fact that I think honestly, this is one of my absolute favorite games in the series. I love the gameplay, the multiplayer, the tracks, the power-ups. It's just one awesome game, and one that I feel that everyone should at least try. I think it's one of the best racing games you can get on Switch, as well as the best game in the overall series. Now over the last couple years, Nintendo has done something pretty incredible for this game. They have released an expansion pass years after its initial release. This expansion added 48 additional tracks, as well as new additional characters to play as, all for the price tag of $25. Honestly, it's a pretty insane deal for $25, and together with the full game, it makes Mario Kart 8 Deluxe the biggest Mario Kart game yet in terms of content. Before I go today, just want to touch on a few more games that I think are awesome games to pick up for the Switch if you love to play racing games. Hotshot Racing is a retro-inspired arcade racer inspired by the early polygon racers of the early to mid-90s. The gameplay in Hotshot Racing features a heavy emphasis on drifting and slipstreaming opponents, which you'll need to master in order to get enough boost to take the lead. The driving in this one is fun, and it's pretty easy to get the feel of, and when you're in single player, the game runs at a crisp 60 FPS. There's a ton of content to play through, including a bunch of modes, like Grand Prix and Time Trial, but there's even crazier ones, like Cops and Robbers and Drive and Explode. For multiplayer, there's plenty of options, 4-player split screen, local wireless play, and online with up to 8 players. It's a good package with plenty to do. On the eShop, it goes on sale quite often, usually for just $2.99. When it's on sale for $3, it's pretty insane. That is dirt cheap, so make sure to get it when it's discounted. It's totally worth it. Fast RMX is a sequel to the Wii U game Fast Racing Neo, and it's an absolute blast. Its gameplay is comparable to the Wipeout series and the F-Zero series with super fast racing through twisted tracks. I really love this one on the Switch, not just for how great it looks. I mean, it looks amazing, especially with it running at 60 FPS, but the gameplay is pretty darn good too. The game's main gimmick is the ability for players to switch between 2 colors at will. Each color corresponds to certain boosts and jump pads on a track, allowing you to use them if you match the color correctly. It's a simple mechanic that adds some depth and a little strategy to push the game beyond just racing fast to the finish line and can make for some thrilling moments as you jump and dash all around. It's one of Switch's indie gems for sure. Top-down racers might seem a bit old school, but don't sleep on them. They can be a lot of fun to play, and the Switch has 2 excellent ones in the genre that you can play. The first one, Mantis Racing, is a modern one with some excellent visuals and fast gameplay. The controls are spot on and easy to understand, and there's plenty of content to enjoy, with 150 events in career mode, along with 13 different types of events, along with the ability to upgrade your cars. This game reminds me a little bit of the NES classic RC Pro-Am, just very modernized. The version on Switch also includes all the DLC too, which is a big plus for Switch owners. Another great top-down racer is Rush Rally Origins. This one takes the top-down racing style and combines it with rally racing physics for a nice, fun mix. The gameplay in this one is also very good, the controls feel great, and there's plenty of options on how you want to play, including touchscreen support. There's a lot of content here too. There's 36 stages to take on, each track can be adjusted with time and weather effects to add more of a challenge, and you have the ability to upgrade and tune your cars just like in a full-fledged rally game. In addition, there's online play with up to 6 other players. This game is also a pretty inexpensive game. It goes for about $15 normally, but it also goes on sale quite often for around $5 or so on the eShop. So so definitely look out for it when it goes on discount if you want a good racing game for very cheap. Finally, there's a relatively new racing game called New Star GP on Switch. This just came out in early 2024. This is a 3D retro style racer mixed with F1 style motorsport racing, essentially making it a spiritual successor to Virtua Racing. Beyond just the straightforward arcade racing, you'll need to manage your pit strategy, as well as choose what adjustments are made to your race car during these pit stops to hopefully give you an advantage in response to what is happening on the track. It's nothing too crazy or complex, but it does add a nice bit of depth, and what you can do during these pit stops can definitely give you some sort of assistance in possibly trying to win a race. Or potentially it can just screw you over if you mess up. The racing itself is straightforward, it's very arcade-like, so if you played other retro-style 3D racers, then you'll be able to easily pick up and play and enjoy this one. Also, visually, it looks great on the Switch. It runs at a smooth 60 FPS. This game was a surprise out of nowhere when it got released earlier this year, but lots seem to enjoy it. Make sure to check it out when you can. And there you go, a bunch of awesome racing games for the Nintendo Switch. There's some truly great racing games out there for the system, and it's been fun sharing my favorites with you. Now, it's your turn. What are some of your favorite racing games for the system? Make sure to list yours in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's favorites. But for now, that is it from me today. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next video.